On this episode of AV Week, Almo acquires a content creation company. AVIXA has a new recommended practice for network security. And LG and Cisco have a partnership that helps their products work better together. All that and more next on AV Week.
The network for the AV industry.
What are you listening to?
This
is AV.
This
is AVNation.
This is AVNation.
This is AV Week, episode 360, recorded Friday, July 20th, 2018. Figure it out.
Support for AVNation is brought to you by BIAM and by FSR.
This is AV Week, your weekly wrap-up of audio-visual news and information. My name is Tim Albright. I am your host. With us to talk about the news and information that we have gathered this week. First up and foremost, YT Lang from A10. Welcome, ma'am.
Hi, Tim. Thanks for having me here.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Also with us, an old friend with a new job. His name is George Fournier, and he is now with Denker. Welcome, sir.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Absolutely. Also with us is Mr. Brad Grimes from the trade organization known as AVIXA. Welcome, sir.
Thanks, Tim. Thanks for having me again.
And last but not least, Mr. Jim Nista. Jim he's the founder of Instio. And this week, Instio was purchased by Almo. So you are technically with Almo then, right?
Right. Yes. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Welcome. Actually, that's the story we're going to start off with. So this is from a commercial integrator, quote unquote. Almo Professional Systems has acquired a content creation company, Instio. The companies have had a close working relationship in the past few years. Mr. Nista, you are now the Senior Director of Content Creation Services for Almo Professional AV. So the first question is to you, actually. With this purchase and with this overarching service sector that Almo has tried to develop, why should integrators use, and end users, honestly, for that matter, use content from distributors like Almo?
Yeah, it's the most important piece of the puzzle for digital signage, and I'm not the only one who says that. I'm biased, but I'm not the only one who says that. But oftentimes it's left on the table. It's just missed, or it's pushed back to the client, or whatever it might be, because integrators don't have in-house creative teams. And so a lot can go wrong when you don't have an in-house creative team or creative resources to turn to. You could lose the entire project. You could frustrate your end client. There's a lot of things that can happen. So we started working with Almo several years ago and became their exclusive content team for all of the projects that are coming. So this is kind of a proven service, nothing new here, but it's now just part of Almo. So that's all we work for.
So is there any sort of will folks who have used Almo in the past for this service and obviously have used you, is there any sort of notice that will happen? Or is it simply, okay, it's Jim and his team, they just now wear Almo shirts instead of Instio?
Yeah, exactly. For, partners we've already been working with, they shouldn't notice anything. New integration partners are coming in all the time on this because they are getting requests for digital signage projects from their end customers. We know some integrators just don't like touching digital signage. And when I pressed for why, it's because they've had challenges with the content creation side and left their end customers somewhat frustrated or dissatisfied or whatever it might be. And so now they can lead with that as a solution. I always say that end clients are not here to with digital signage, they're not here to buy a bunch of technology. They're trying to solve a visual communication problem. And so that's why leading with content first, being able to offer that is huge. So if you're a small team, a small integration team, or a larger one, now, this is just a much more streamlined approach to getting your content.
Yeah, it's a very interesting approach. I paneled I was the moderator of a panel at Digital Signage Expo this year with 3 integrators. Each of them had a different go-to-market strategy when it came to the content creation. It was very interesting. Actually, George will bring you in on this from the end user standpoint. Mm-hmm. Does it matter who supplies the content, the integrator or third party, or letting you guys go out and kind of get it yourself?
Short answer, yes. Long answer, no.
I mean, it's a company I worked for several years ago had a great way they came to market. They provided AV for retail.
Okay.
And the whole thing was they always claimed, it was all about the wow. It was, they wanted to make sure that the client was always communicating their message. And it didn't matter whether it was a projector on the wall, a bunch of TV screens, or paper flyers that somebody was handing out in the mall. It always had to have that same continuity to it. Now, that company actually made a huge investment in having a bunch of graphics guys on staff, a bunch of marketing people on staff. And, it was a big part of the overhead was handling all of that internally. So for some projects, it was great. For other projects, it took us out of the being competitive because of the pricing. Now, when you have smaller companies who a client comes to them and it's not their mainstay to actually do digital signage, but somebody comes to them and says, hey, I have this opportunity, or can you help me out with this? Sure, right out of the box, we can handle the technology, but where's the content come from? And they say, well, our marketing guy is going to do it for now, and then we'll figure it out later. So, the screens are live for 6 months, and then as the message changes, it still has that message from 6 months ago. And it's like, well, how do we get that? How do we update that? How do we keep that current? Having an opportunity that Almo is now presenting, where a company can come in and sell that technology, and then also sell this service that, hey, we can generate that stuff for you. You can refresh monthly, you can refresh weekly, you can refresh yearly, and it's not going to come out of your overhead, and it's just a recurring, as a service type solution that the integrator can actually offer without having to make that large investment. I think is huge. Gary Kay did a thing with Almo back probably about 10 years ago in New York City. I remember him doing a speech about what's going on with digital signage, and his big thing was, hey, invest in graphics people right now, because this is going to be your recurring revenue for this. Some people listened, some people didn't, and now, 10 years later, Almo is invests in bringing that service on board and is offering that to their people, and it's very exciting to see something like that available.
Yeah, absolutely. Brad, how does this acquisition fit into AVIXA's focus on the experience? AVIXA is the audiovisual integrated experience association. How does this acquisition fit into the experience aspect of AV installations?
Well, the acquisition itself is great, and we're happy for Jim and for Almo. The bigger picture is just the acknowledgement and the recognition that you need to be thinking about content. As Jim said, you can't just lead with technology, whether it's digital signage or a lot of audiovisual solutions. And the fact that what AVIXA has been talking about when they talk about the experience is that it's more than technology. It is the content. It is the space that the solution is installed in. And how you approach content will vary. Almo and Jim have one solution. Other integrators may bring the capability in-house. One of the things that we're trying to do through our trade shows and whatever is to get content producers who do it in their own shops involved with the association, not necessarily as members, but just at Las Vegas or in Orlando and meeting the AV professionals, because acquiring the capability won't work for everybody, but knowing people who are really good at content will be important. So we don't really care how people start to offer content to their customers, but that they do.
Yeah, absolutely. YT, I want to bring in you as a manufacturer. What's the best way to educate integrators and honestly designers to really kind of capture what it is that products like yours and some of your competitors are capable of when they're designing a system and honestly creating the content?
Yes, of course. So I'll say, the most efficient way is, of course, through the webinars. There are tons of webinars available. So I'll say whoever is, we A10, we also have our monthly webinar about Pro AV and KVM solutions. So that's one thing. But another thing I would like to bring up is, since our first topic is about Almo, I would like to talk about Almo E4. I believe, we all know about Almo E4. It's a one-day event where they have tabletops and trainings. So for example, ATEN, we offer the certified HDBaseT training. So the trainees, will come to our training and will be able to receive the HDBaseT installer certificate, as well as 1.5 CTS, AVIXA CTS RUs. And I would love to share with you, because our training starts very early, like 7:30 a.m. in the morning, but still we can get a full house, like almost up to 50 people. So you can see people are eager to learn about the technology and the installation. And so another thing is, for example, in the training, we will talk about case study that's related to digital signage as well. So I have to say, because we are a great partner with Almo as well. So I think by seeing Almo, they start with not just the hardware, but as well as their service like Almo Content, Almo Connect, Almo Control, etc. And now they have the digital signage content. It actually pretty echoes back to their message in InfoComm this year, which is no bots. So basically back to the education topic, I'll say take advantage of events like Almo E4, where you can see there are a lot of great training and can help you not only with your job, but as well as being able to equip with the knowledge for the Pro AV.
Well, I just want to say this. I'm impressed the fact that you were able to get 50 people in a classroom at 7:30 in the morning.
Yeah. And actually, you know what? The first time we did was 3 p.m. And we didn't really have that many people because we found that people are, pretty tired. It's been a whole day and people are running back to their home. So actually 7:30 a.m. is a great time.
Wow. All right. All right, guys. Our next story comes to us from our friends over at AV Magazine. AVIXA has published a new quote-unquote recommended practice. We'll get to that in a second on networked AV security. The recommended practice was developed by a task group of security experts and technology managers from ACOM, Bay Systems, Cornell University, Ithaca, Crestron, the European Center for Medium Range Weather Forecast, Harman, and get this, the International Criminal Court. So, not people exactly uncaring about security. Mr. Grimes, we're going to start with you for obvious reasons, since you are our resident AVIXA expert, at least on this show. First thing, though, just for clarification, this came out of the Standards Committee, but it's not a standard.
It's not. So a recommend practice, it's standard. It went through many of the same processes that a standard would go through. It did have a task group. It had a bunch of people who it took a long time. This has been in the process for quite a while. And it was vetted again by more security experts, but it did not go through the standards process. It's not a, do this to increase security. It's recommended practice. It's sort of like I don't want to say a primer because that's too basic. It's about 35 pages and it is, it's a beginning of a conversation. There's nothing to say that once this is out there and people start to, look at it and start to follow the recommended practices, that we wouldn't create a standard out of it. But it is, it's been a long time coming, as I said, based on a lot of member feedback, so that we know a lot of folks in our industry who have been talking about security of AV systems for a long time. A lot of those folks were involved and they wanted to create something that they could share with their peers that said, these are the types of things you need to talk about. If nothing else, if you'll just change all the default passwords on your devices from password to something else, that's, and there's some very basic things. So it's an awareness raiser, if you will. But there are good, like I said, best practices and recommendations and information in there that should get AV people thinking about their devices as nodes on a network, because they are, and these are the steps you need to take. So it's not a standard the way a lot of our other standards are, but once it's out there and once we get the feedback, it could develop into certain discrete standards for different parts of the of network security.
All right. Yeah, please change your password. Just right there.
Admin is not good for your router.
No, password, or one. We can go on forever. YT, do recommended practices like this and documents like this from trade organizations, governing bodies that are obviously invested in the industry, do they help you when it comes to your product development and your product timeline?
Yes, of course. I would say I think it's a really good report, because I think it's like one step further. We're not just talking about network, we're talking about security already. So for, like we actually start with KVM. So we have experience and knowledge about the network infrastructure as well as the security. So, data encryption, access right, and even alert notification, things like that. So I think it's a really good thing, and you can think about it as a way to communicate as well. So in the Pro-AV world, so many different components and solution providers. How do we sync up and have mutual understanding on the security level of communication? But another thing is, I would like to take one step backward. The thing is, because I believe we all go to Infocom, and we are seeing a lot of AV over IP solutions. But there's one thing that we would love to share is, on top of that, the knowledge of the network for the system integrators. Do we have enough knowledge? So for example, do we know the difference between 1 gig, 10 gig? There are different characteristics, how to choose between them. Layer 2, layer 3, network switch, standalone, stackable, IGMP, jumbo friends, this kind of things. And by saying AV over IP, there more that, of course, design installation is important, but I'll say another thing that we should really think about is doing troubleshooting. When we have sources, we have displays, there are different components in the middle. It's easier for us to do the troubleshooting, we just remove one and see if it works. But think about it, how do we do troubleshooting over IP? Okay, we just don't get the video there.
Remove the entire switch out of the component and see if it's still.
Yeah, so it's like, so vendors like us, one thing we like to really talk about is be prepared, be equipped with the knowledge for the network, not just about the design installation, but as well as the troubleshooting. Yeah. So for example, for us, we have our AV over IP solutions as well. So that's why we came up with the implementation guide, because we know this kind of questions will be asked from Pro-AV world.
Yeah, George YT brings up a really good point about more and more AV going on the network. Mm-hmm. I understand this is not a standard. I'll say that again. It's still a recommended practice, but it's still something that you as an end user can use and kind of give to your integrators. How do folks like you and other end users make sure that these practices are put into place in your next installation?
That's a good question. I mean, it's a conversation that's long overdue for a lot of integrators. In my particular case, our workplace technologies team is made up of AV guys and IT guys working together. We're not allowed to say AV or IT. We're all workplace technologies. So which seemed a little silly to me at the very first second that I heard it, but then instantly I thought about it and said, well, wait a minute. That means there's no walls in between. So we're instantly automatically talking to the customers about solutions and it may go down an AV road, it may go down an IT road. And the whole thing is, you really have to, nowadays with everything being on IP, you need to think about having that security in place right from the beginning. Now the IT guys automatically think of that stuff. The AV guys were a little late to the show, and to have recommended practices like this that we can start having the conversations internally, or when we're dealing with larger customers whose IT and their security teams are actually at the table with you while you're talking, and that's the first question that they're asking. You can pull this out and say, this is what our industry is recommending, and this is what we follow. It's huge. I think it's a huge sales tool for us, and it's a huge integration tool for us as well.
All right, Jim, we'll wrap it up with you. What are some of the security concerns that digital signage networks have? It's something that a lot of IT integrators may or may not think about a lot.
Yeah, well, digital signage content is changing. Just even a couple of years ago, it was mostly videos and images, mostly slideshows, digital posters, those types of things. And you still see that in digital out-of-home advertising, but a lot more networks are starting to have both public and private data. So public data might be weather feeds or Twitter feeds or those types of things, but we're getting more and more requests for very, very, very sensitive private data to be distributed to in-house at corporate communication screens, those types of things. So, a digital sign that has to be able to create an authentication to Salesforce and pull data back and display data in a very unique way of current sales results for a company, or pulling from an exchange server. So, security for us with those types of projects become complex and important and everything. And we're doing a lot of development and programming around that. So our work is not just creating pretty pictures for the screen, but content means also, a Salesforce widget, or other types of sensitive data that might be displayed on a screen. And security for that is extremely important. And we're finding ourselves, we work with IT departments just as much as we work with the AV integrators.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, guys. Finally, from our friends over at Innovate, LG is partnering with Cisco for video conferencing systems. These new LG displays will detect, quote unquote, the Cisco system once it is plugged in for the first time, and will interact with Cisco room kits. It will also adapt. There's no information on exactly what that means on their first time that they're used. Cisco and LG actually will be able to monitor one another. So the Cisco will be able to tell the health and the system uptime of the LG, and the LG will be able to do the same thing with the Cisco. George, first question is for you. Do partnerships like this matter when making a decision on products for upgrades or new installations?
I think it depends on what you're trying to do. If you're putting, like from Danker's side of the world, we're a Steelcase dealer, and Steelcase has a huge partnership with Microsoft and Surface Hub. So we're living in that realm already. But when manufacturers team up and can provide you solutions that are supposed to make it easier for your integration, I think that there's a big opportunity there. I'm going to be curious to see how well this works, because they're doing it all over HDMI with CEC control, or as I call it, CEC doesn't control. So it'd be interesting to see how well it actually really works. But for other companies, I know at FSR, we in my previous life, we worked very closely with Crestron, with AMX at the time, so I'm dating myself there a little bit. But co-developing some packages for mounting their products, or for control of their products, or interface of some of their products when people needed push button controls and stuff. And so seeing some of that, where the companies that actually can complement each other in an established package that'll actually make it easier for the integrators to just say, hey, I know these two work together and I can plug them in and go. Repeatable installations, simple installations, that type of situation affects the bottom line. It makes it a lot easier for them. I can send my level B tech out to install and put the stuff together, then, instead of having to make sure that I have a field engineer out there and I have a programmer out there and all that stuff. So it can affect the cost on the job real quick. And if it works, I think it would be a great opportunity. And those types of products are those type of partnerships, I should say, could really benefit everybody clear across the board.
Yeah, absolutely. YT, from a manufacturing standpoint, what do manufacturers get out of partnerships like this? Obviously, there's a benefit to both parties involved. So what are some of those benefits?
Yeah, cool. I'll say three things. The first one, I kind of would like to echo back to what George just mentioned, as well as our previous discussions. It's about troubleshooting. The troubleshooting is not just system integrators' jobs. It's everyone's job. It's it's all related. So again, imagine, how many times.
YT, just for the record, you just made every field engineer very, very happy by saying that, just so you know.
Okay, because I can explain why we think of that way. Okay, so imagine how many times we have to do the troubleshooting when there's source, there's display, and just some issues. For the system integrators, again, they have to remove the components to figure out which one is causing the problem. And the Cisco, not to mention, for example, like 3 or 4 different components from 3 or 4 different vendors. That means he or she has to call 3 or 4 different numbers. And then for us, we'll walk through with them to figure out what's wrong. So by having the products integrated together, that means in-house is being tested, supposedly it's being fully tested. So it can save that kind of issue. So for system integrators, they can save time on troubleshooting and spend more time on other projects. For end users, will be less system downtime. Because once it's not working, it's not working. Imagine if we are a bar owner and the World Cup is just finished, but if there's World Cup and our bar is not able to do business because we don't have the sports on the TVs, imagine how painful that would be. And for vendors, we can spend more time on opportunities with the system integrators. So that's the first thing. And the second thing is the integration, especially for control system. So for example, control system, so like us, we have our device driver. So for the system integrator they do not need to key in the R232 codes for themselves, or they don't have to learn the IR codes for the IR remote controllers. So that's the benefits of this kind of control system integration. And the third one that I really would like to bring up is the business. After all, the business, because so many times when we jump into the concalls with either the system integrators or even some end users who have engineers, when we talk about our video wall solutions, we talk about video extenders, then they will ask, also, do you have recommended displays or projectors? So that's when we can bring them together. Because, for example, let's say if there are some other vendors who've been working together and we are testing our products together, that's not only beneficial to us as manufacturers, but beneficial to system integrators and for the end users as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Jim, I'll ask you real quickly. What sort of partnerships like this make sense in the signage market?
Yeah, specifically to content, there's a couple of partnerships that we've started to capitalize on already. One of those is there's a Peerless kiosk that has a bright sign player built into it, and for us, that means we can actually do some wayfinding or donor walls or those types of interactive solutions as a touchscreen, and essentially ship. Our work is we ship an SD card, micro SD card. So we do all the content, we do all the programming, we do it all set up, and the client's happy with the way it looks. And what they receive from us is a micro SD card, or even the files emailed to them that go on that micro SD card. So we get really excited about these types of options. For years, everyone's tried to do like a digital menu in a box where you purchase that panel and there's a phone number or contact or something where you can contact somebody and then they're going to help design and set up your actual menu content. And that's coming. I don't think anybody's been too successful with it, but I feel like it's that code's about to be cracked. So.
All right. Very good. Well, that will do it for us. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us. Mr. Brad Grimes from AVIXA, thank you, sir.
Thank you, Tim. Appreciate it.
How do people find you and or AVIXA?
AVIXA is obviously at avixa.org or at AVIXA on Twitter, and I tweet at bgrimesdc. Sorry, I had to remember that.
All right. Mr. Fournier, good to see you, sir. And congratulations on the new gig.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Danker can be found online at Danker 1829. That was the year they were founded. Yeah, we're coming up on 190 years old next year.
Wow.
That's a lot of candles.
Yeah, that's a lot of candles. We're still working on building the cake for the 200. You can also find us on the webs at danker.com. You can follow me on Twitter at George V. Fournier, because I wanted to make the simplest, easiest to find Twitter handle possible. And you can also find me on the Instagram and the Facebooks.
Very good. George also has a very nice organization called AV Gives Back, so check them out as well. It does some good work.
Yeah, thanks. Especially if you're doing anything community related, please make sure to use the hashtag AV Gives Back, and we'll make sure to share your information and get it out to as many people as possible.
Absolutely. YT, thank you so much. Thank you so much for joining us. How do people find you or A10?
Sure. Besides our website, www.a10.com, you can find us in LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook. And one of my favorite is our YouTube channels, because on our YouTube channels, you can see the successful stories. For example, the bar, the corporate, the education, etc. And you can find me through LinkedIn at YTLING as well.
All right, very good. And Mr. Nista, thank you, sir, and congratulations again on the acquisition of your company. And how do people find you or Almo now?
Well, it's almoproav.com is the place to go for all of that. And all of the sales reps have already been selling content services already. So it's just more of the same, hopefully a lot more of the same.
Yeah, absolutely. My name is Tim Albright. Don't follow me on the Twitters. I will either complain about the Cardinals because Grimes is a freaking Cubs fan.
They're leading.
Or what?
Forget it.
We're recording this on Friday, and apparently the Cards are playing the Cubs, and my money is on the Cubs. And don't tell my wife I said that. Go by the website if you would please. AVNation.tv, AVNation.tv. You will find this program and a host of others. While you're there, please check out our underwriter section. These are the folks and the companies that help us and support us financially, help us bring you AVWeek and ResiWeek and all the other great shows that we have. Also helps us cover Infocom, which we did a month ago, and CEDIA in a couple months, and a whole bunch of other shows that we go around the country and honestly around the world covering. Also, one last thing, our July webinar takes place this Tuesday, so we're recording this on Friday. We'll post this on Monday. So tomorrow, as you're listening to this, is our next webinar. Steve Greenblatt, Dave Hatz, and Dave Barnett from the Sextant Group is joining us, talking about module migration between all the different control platforms, dynamic, data-driven user interfaces, and network control systems. So check that out also. That's Tuesday at 1 o'clock Eastern. All that and more at avnation.tv, avnation.tv. Thanks so much for listening. Thank you so much for watching. That's all the time we have for AV Week.